Good morning. Welcome into Let's Bet It here on Pickswise and Pickswise.com. Let's Bet It brought to you by our friends at Superbook Sports. Make sure you subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel as well. Let us know in the comments what picks you're on or what questions you have. Download the Pickswise app on the Apple Store and Google Play. I'm Mark Zinno. He's Jared Smith. On this Thanksgiving Eve as we get you set for a lot of football, family, friends, and fun. Jared, great to be with you here on this Wednesday morning. How are things?
Doing okay. Another wild upset in the World Cup arena this morning. Japan beats Germany. Just another ho-hum day for World Cup soccer. Excited for England, USA later this week. It's going to be interesting. Usually we're so used to football and some basketball on Thanksgiving Eve and day, but soccer all week long. It's a different vibe.
Yeah, say the least. And let's hope the United States doesn't get waxed by England. But that, among other things, we'll talk about the NFL midweek line moves as well. NFL's guest Anthony Armstrong will join us, former NFL wide receiver and co-host for the Believe in the Commanders podcast. We'll look at some college football key games. Plus, I'll even give you a scenario where Alabama still gets in the college football playoff.
Love
close it out. Plays
Chaos
of the day. Yeah, it's not as chaotic as you'd think. Trust me. Well, it's a long shot.
Thoughts on TCU. I'm curious your thoughts on TCU, but again, we'll get to that down the road.
Right? Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. Let's start in the NFL midweek line moves here. We looked at Thursday night as the Giants and Cowboys, the only divisional game in NFL that week. It opened up at Cowboys -8, bet up quickly to Cowboys -9.5. I think you get two things at play here, Jared. One, the Cowboys coming off their huge win off Minnesota, but also Cowboys, public team, Thanksgiving, few games on the schedule. This is going to steam for the public here, where the Cowboys are now up to nearly a double-digit favorite.
Yeah, and you look at this game, and it's the matchups don't favor the Giants. The offensive line has been in shambles, and the Giants the Cowboys lead the NFL and all of the win rate metrics up front, pass rush, and getting after the passer. So that's going to be just a tough matchup. And then on the back end, Adoree Jackson getting hurt, the Giants, best cover corner, and you got to deal with CeeDee Lamb and what's a very explosive Dallas offense. So I understand why the number's been bet up. I wouldn't be surprised if it public and sharp money both on Dallas this week. Now that it's gotten to that, approaching that key number of 10, that's probably where we'll see at least some of the smart money maybe buy back on the Giants. But this is just a really tough matchup for the Giants. And I think this is a Giants team that kind of got it. I don't want to say exposed, but they weren't as good as their record indicated. And I think we saw that on Sunday against the Lions, who are a very tough team. Say what you want about their, struggles at times defensively. They're playing a little better on that end. And I think the Lions are a pretty well-coached team, and they're a pretty tough-nosed team. So it'll be interesting to see how the Giants respond from their obviously worst loss of the year.
Remind you guys, divisional dogs this year covering at a 60% clip, especially ones that are favored or underdogs rather by more than 3 points. Speaking of underdogs by more than 3 points, that's what the Falcons opened as, an underdog of 3 points to the Commanders. Now this line is Commanders -4.5 here. This is an awful matchup for the Atlanta Falcons. This is a Commanders team that hasn't allowed anybody to score more than 20 points in 6 consecutive weeks. They won 5 of their last 6. They get Chase Young back to the best defensive line in the NFL. The one thing the Falcons do well is run the ball. The Commanders stop the run very well. Commanders have better personnel on offense across the board. Yeah, this looks like a complete mismatch for Atlanta.
Yeah, and then the Kyle Pitts injury, I know he hasn't been utilized much this year, but he's still a chess piece that defenses have to account for. So you take him off the board, and this Falcons offense does get a little less explosive. I think the defensive discrepancies are a big reason why this number moved off of 3 very early in the week. It was part of, I wish I betted at 3, but I did put it out there in our early birds column on Monday that this was a candidate for being kind of a steamy line. And so far we have seen that. I'll be honest, Taylor Heineke's numbers, they don't really jump off the page at me, but I think he brings a little more intangible to this Washington offense than Carson Wentz did. He's got the trust and the faith of the locker room because of, the success he had in prior years. I think he's got the trust of his head coach, Ron Rivera. This is an interesting game now that it's gotten to 4.5, 5, because I don't know if the Commanders, as that large of a favorite, really catch my eye despite the matchup problems. And I will say I'll be honest, the Commanders offense has some massive, massive weapons on their team too. So we'll see how this one plays out. But I think now that it's gotten, I think it touched 5 at some spots before we finally started to see some buyback towards Atlanta. My guess is we kind of see it hover in that 3.5, 4.5 range until we get to Sunday.
I would think the best angle for this game, wait till the team totals come out. If you get a Falcons team total at 20.5 or anything above that, I don't think you'll see it, but take the under on the Falcons team total. Other game, Thanksgiving night, Patriots at Vikings. We know what happened last week to both these teams. Vikings got blown out at home. Patriots basically took the Jets' lunch money, or at least they took Zach Wilson's lunch money. But this line opened at 3, quickly bet down to 2.5. So the Vikings laying 2.5 at home here. But the Patriots' defense is where everybody's focusing right now.
I love this. I love this Pats defense in this spot. And the Darisaw injury, I mean, this is kind of a mirror image. Take away the offense. I'm not comparing New England's offense to Dallas's offense. But on the defensive side of the ball, both of these teams have identical pressure rates. The Patriots and the Cowboys are 1-2 in pressure rate in the NFL this year, right at basically 28.5%, which is a very high pressure rate. And you take Darisaw off the board. I mean, I just don't see how Kirk Cousins has time to throw in this game. So, that now we'll see what New England can do offensively. That's been the bugaboo for this Patriots team all year. But for the matchup that everyone's going to be interested in, which is Kirk Cousins against the Patriots and Bill Belichick, I really think New England has a huge edge here. And a lot of the trends and obviously the matchups favor New England. I'm not surprised this moved off the 3 towards the Pats. I still kind of like the Pats at 2.5, but obviously if it does get back to 3, then it definitely becomes a play for me on New England.
All right, we're going to get to Anthony Armstrong here, former NFL wide receiver and co-host of the Believe in the Commanders podcast in just a moment. Let's kick forward here to college football, Week 13 key games. Let's run down this slate here real quick, and then I'll give you a scenario where Alabama still makes the college football playoff. Michigan at Ohio State, the big daddy of them all here. Ohio State minus 7.5 and a total at 57. I can't really find a way for Michigan to win this game, even with Blake Corum. Without Blake Corum, I think it's impossible. And not only that, if Blake Corum plays, he's not going to be 100%. I'm going to back Ohio State and lay the 7.5.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with that. I already locked in the bet. So there's really not much to say about this Michigan team besides the fact that they're very one-dimensional. And when you're facing a team like Ohio State, you can't be one-dimensional. You have to, because I know we love talking about offenses in just in general, but I really like what this Ohio State defense has done this year. They have improved metrically across the board under Jim Knowles. And if you are a one-dimensional offense, you are not going to have a lot of success against this defense. And unlike Michigan's defense, which listen, Michigan's defense is fantastic too. It's one of the strengths of their team. Maybe not as strong as last year, but still a top 10 unit. But Ohio State can run the ball and throw the ball, and it creates problems on that end. Then you get obviously the revenge factor. You get the fact that this game's in Columbus. I mean, there's a lot of things pointing to why this line deserves to be north of a touchdown, and why we haven't seen it come down yet. And I think Ohio State rolls here. I really do.
I'll put it in this context that Michigan this year has scored 51 touchdowns. Their quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, has only thrown 14. That's 27%. Conversely, Ohio State has scored 68 touchdowns. Their quarterback, C.J. Stroud, has thrown for 35. That's better than 50%. Give me the team with the better quarterback. All right, next is South Carolina and Clemson. South Carolina shocked the world and Tennessee last week with 63 points and a rout of the Volunteers. I told you guys Tennessee was overrated. That said, Clemson is laying 2 touchdowns here in a number that's quickly been moving in favor of Clemson in a total of 52. I think that South Carolina, while Shane Beamer is a fun and exciting coach and he has that team playing hard for 60 minutes, don't get it twisted. Clemson's won 7 in a row, including wins by 30, 35, 21, 24, and 49 in the last 5 years. A lot of emotional energy expended for South Carolina last week. And while I know that Clemson is stunk covering double-digit spreads this year, I'll back the Clemson Tigers and lay the points.
Yeah, I don't have a bet here. I mean, natural progression says you're going to see some, regression from South Carolina after that game. I mean, that was, I don't know. exactly how they played that well, but that was Spencer Rattler's moment in the sun right there. So good for him.
I know how TC's pass defense sucks. That's how.
Yeah, but Spencer Rattler was not. No one expected that performance. I don't care how. I mean, it's still an SEC defense. So I mean, yeah, they haven't played up to standards this year, but everyone was very surprised to see Spencer play that well. But again, you give them credit. They showed up and they beat a top 5 team. I've got this. I think this line's right. I've got this right at basically 13.5. I don't see any value here on either side. Clemson hasn't really overly impressed me this year. They've played better of late. And listen, South Carolina, relatively low total game. I mean, you can make a case for why the 14.5 might have a little value, but I have a 13.5, so that's not enough of a move for me to make a play on either side here.
Finally, Notre Dame and USC. USC and Caleb Williams trying to do what many people think they can't, run the final 3 games and get to the college football playoff here. USC laying 5.5, total of 64.5. The Trojans have been playing with fire as of late. They have been involved in a ton of close one-score games here. I think it's the same thing this week. I'll take Notre Dame in the points at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one case that you really can make for USC here is the fact that they got absolutely, I don't want to say snubbed, but they're on the outside of the playoff picture right now. They need some help. So style points matter for them. And we've seen Lincoln Riley have no fear running it up against Colorado. So if they do have a lead in this game late, I don't think we're going to see any de-throttling of USC. They will not hesitate to drop 50 on Notre Dame if that's where this is trending. I don't think that's where this is going to trend. The total at 64.5, though, makes you think it's going to be a high-scoring game because, let's be honest, Notre Dame, their offense hasn't exactly been explosive this year. So with a high total, and I know USC's defense has obviously struggled, but this isn't UCLA with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. This is Notre Dame with Drew Pine that's basically going to just run the rock at you a million times. So I think if I were to bet this game, I would bet USC because I think the style points matter more for them at this point. And I think they're going to win this game. I don't know if Notre Dame has the horses to win this game. So I think I would lean USC here.
Well, USC does not need any help. They run the table and win the Pac-12. They're in. They are 100% in. The loser of Michigan, Ohio State is out, and USC, along with TCU, if they run the table, are in. Those are your 4. So USC, for lack of a better term, controls its own destiny as far as making the college football playoff, especially with the last 3 wins that they would have over a ranked UCLA, a ranked Notre Dame,
and a ranked Oregon. Beats Georgia? What if LSU beats Georgia?
Well, that's not happening. You have a better chance at yourself.
What do you mean it's not happening? Anything could happen. Anything could happen, Mark.
It's not happening. Name your reasonable wager here, and I will bet you that UGA wins that game.
I didn't look at what the line is. I mean, I can look if you want me to.
16.5 or 17.
Is that really what it is?
That's what the line was posted last week. It opened up at 15. It's been bet up to 16 already. Georgia is going to pace that team.
Sure. Okay. But, what if Michigan and Ohio State is an instant classic and you still have a one-loss USC?
The committee has told us over the last couple of years those conference championships matter. And if they get one, they're going to get in. So, and this, I'll tell you, here's the scenario real quick, Jared, about how Alabama still has life here in this college football playoff scenario. I know a lot of people think it's completely impossible, but it isn't. And you need 5 things to happen, right? UGA will beat LSU. Ohio State beats Michigan. TCU loses the Big 12 championship game. USC loses the Pac-12 championship game. And Clemson loses the ACC championship game. So what you have are UGA at 1 and OSU at 2. What's left? A 1-loss Michigan team, a 2-loss Bama team, and a 2-loss Oregon Pac-12 champion. Which one of those 3 gets left out? My guess is Bama isn't the one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's far more unlikely of a scenario than LSU beating Georgia in a one roll of the dice. But yes, in that scenario, I could absolutely see Alabama being it. I mean, listen, I've been a big pro Alabama supporter this year. I know that the results haven't indicated that, but the power ratings tell me they're a top 5 team. And I care about the power ratings a lot more than I care about public perception or, what the rankings say or anything like that. And there's several power ratings that I trust more than others. And the ones that I trust the most have Alabama at 5 in front of Tennessee, in front of, a lot of those other teams. So even though they lost to Tennessee. So I'm with you on Alabama. Listen, I would much rather, let's just leave it at this. And I tweeted this out the other day and I got absolutely hammered for it. I'd rather see anyone in the College Football Playoff than TCU. And I know that being an undefeated conference champion in a Power 5 matters, but those games don't interest me at all. Georgia against TCU, now that would be a walkover. That would be an absolute walkover. So I hope we get some chaos because I don't want to see TCU in the 4 spot and basically have another semifinal where you can sleep through it. Because I don't think TCU is really that good of a team, top to bottom.
Well, and more on what the committee thinks of Alabama from several fronts. One, why is LSU ranked over USC at this point? Because they beat Alabama. It's not because of their win over Ole Miss. Trust me. It's because they beat Alabama. That's why they're ahead of them. As well, Alabama is ranked ahead of Tennessee, a team that they lost to. So it tells you what they think of Alabama at number 7 here, or at number 8 rather, because again, Clemson has a chance to win a conference championship. USC has a chance to win a conference championship. TCU has a chance to win a conference championship. And LSU has a chance to win a conference championship. If all those things don't work out, guess what? Alabama conveniently slides right in. And that's exactly what the committee told you by ranking them where they did.
I mean, I'm fine with it, but people will riot.
They shouldn't. Alabama's still one of the best 5 teams in the country, as
totally
you talked
agree.
about. Just because they lost some games, it doesn't mean that isn't the case anymore. All right, speaking of one of the best teams in their respective conferences, can we consider the Washington Commanders becoming one of those teams? Here to talk about that with us from the host of the Believe in Commanders podcast, former NFL wide receiver Anthony Armstrong joins us here on Let's Bet It. Anthony, good morning. Welcome. I have said prior to the season that it didn't matter who played quarterback for the Commanders because ultimately if that defense got fixed, that's what would carry them forward. And this defense right now is playing as good as any defense in the league, and it's what will carry them. How far can this defense carry them?
I think this defense can carry this team into the playoffs, and I do think it does matter who's at quarterback. I think Taylor Heineke has a special impact, but the defense is playing out of their mind. I mean, right now, you can't name a better trio of pass rushers between John Allen, Deron Payne, and Montez Sweat. I mean, this league has, they're up there in the tops of the leagues with how many times they hit the quarterback. And they just gave the Texans hell last week. And with the secondary, too. You can't forget the secondary. Cam Curl, his impact since he's been back on the field has been huge. The way they've been able to utilize Bobby McCain, Derek Forrest. They found something really, really special and dangerous with that defense, and they're taking advantage of it.
Anthony, one of the things that popped out to me when I was going through some of the advanced numbers from the weekend was how well Brian Robinson played. He was actually the highest graded PFF offensive player on the team. And maybe that's a surprise, maybe it's not. But this Washington offense has some serious weapons. Maybe they're more they could be the most dangerous, trio of receivers maybe in the division. I know Dallas certainly has a case for that. But man, they are dangerous, and they've got dudes on the outside that can make some serious hay. How do you grade this Washington offense with Heineke as the starter, comparatively speaking, to the rest of the division?
Just compared to the rest of the division, they don't stack up to what Dallas has. Dallas is completely, totally explosive right now. I mean, Tony Pollard is really takes that offense to another level. Plus, they're looking at adding some more weapons, hopefully, maybe later on in the season here. So that's kind of scary to think about.
Of course, in a vacuum.
That's scary.
Another level.
Lordy, but the way Washington's playing now is really good. And I think this is what they expected to be able to put out on the field starting the season. Obviously, Brian Robinson having been shot, he wasn't able to start the season. But now you have an identity about you. They're fine running the ball 40-something times, and they don't need Taylor Heineke to throw for 300 yards, and everybody's okay with that. You find a way to win, and that's what's ultimately most important. I mean, he's 4-1 as a starter. They won 5 of the last 6, so they got a good recipe going. Brian Robinson brings some physicality, and it allows Antonio Gibson to be flexible, run some routes, be able to return some kicks, and touch the ball in different ways.
Anthony, you mentioned teams getting some help. Orlando. Odell Beckham Jr. is out there right now looking for a job. And there's a lot of rumors of where he may go. What's the best landing spot for Odell?
The best landing spot, if you're talking from a NFC East perspective, somewhere out of the NFC would be great. But for him personally, I think Dallas is probably going to be the best bet. I mean, this team's already built to make it to a long run into the Super Bowl, to the playoffs, and eventually a potential Super Bowl. I think Odell could put them over the edge. His playmaking ability, and the reason that people are looking for him to join a team so much right now is because he will make an immediate impact. The one question I have is, are they going to be able to implement him into the offense effectively? Are there going to be too many, too many Chiefs, in a sense, the guys that need to have the ball in their hands? But he did well in LA last year. So he should be able to do that again, I would think, in Dallas. So Dallas is probably going to be the play. It's probably the best bet.
We have a trio of Thursday games this week. Thursday games are always the toughest to cap, Anthony. You have the travel, you have the short week, all of those things that play into it. And then the extra added layer of the Thanksgiving Day, pomp and circumstance getting thrown into this week's game. What are you kind of vibing for this week? What's been your experience practicing and traveling on short weeks on Thursday games? And, what should we expect from these three games this week?
Short weeks are tough. Just obviously talk about the schedule. You lose a day on the front end. You don't get that day to essentially take off and watch the tape. You almost have to go right back into it, but the playbooks are going to be so truncated, much smaller, not going to be as much variety. You're going to see what teams do the best. I mean, it's kind of like, remember the Titans, it's like 10 plays. It's like Novocaine. That's what they're going to have to get back to. And maybe they had a wrinkle or two that they had been working that they could potentially pull up, but with as much work these coaches and players do to study teams and study their opponents, you don't have that. You don't have that liberty on a short week. So the tough part about playing on those short weeks is just your whole schedule is thrown off. But you just, fortunately, you can get back to playing football, and that can get you back to normal.
It's a great reference. Remember the Titans right there. Well, good pull there, Anthony. Speaking of the Thanksgiving slate, any game you like in particular, any side total you look at for Thanksgiving that you want to throw out there?
Man, that Dallas game, I think that they are going to really light it up. They're a talented team in my eyes. We see Giants, Cowboys. Thanks for pulling that up because I did not pull up the spread. At 9.5, I think that they can cover that. And it seems like a big number, but the reason that I think that they can cover is because I think the Giants they've spent all that they got. If you're holding up the Giants side, that'd be a safe bet, but I don't think they have enough juice now. They've shown it all. You know what I mean?
Well, the fact that divisional dogs cover at a 60% clip this year, and that's a huge number. With the Giants having to absolutely look, they're a banged up team right now. But the Cowboys have been giving up chunks of yards on the ground. That's the one thing the Giants do well. And I would say if the Giants have any success with Saquon, they can keep that offense off the field. It was a one-score game last time. Granted, it was Cooper Rush, obviously not Dak Prescott. But remember, the Giants are playing for their playoff lives in this game. Both these teams are 7-3. Cowboys already got a game in the bag. If the Giants lose, they've effectively relegated themselves to the lowest wild card seed out there, right? That's what is on the line in this game.
Yes, and then they have to play Washington twice, and Washington gets a bye in between. Twice. So it's not an easy road for New York. No. I think they've given you all that they got. I mean, I think Brian Dable's done a great job in New York, but I don't think they got anything else in the tank that they can pull out to just carry them over the hump right now.
I think the Giants are a very talented, untalented team. Their coaching staff is very talented, but they just don't have where's the offense coming from? They couldn't move the ball against the Lions. How are you going to move the ball against the Cowboys with Parsons running up your tuchus the whole game and your offensive line?
Well, he may not play. Parsons has still got that injury lagging. He didn't finish the Vikings.
Well, yeah, obviously that changes. I'll be honest, that might be worth. Defensive linemen aren't worth a lot on the point spread, Anthony. But Micah doesn't play. That might be worth a half point or so.
Yeah, I can get behind that because he's such a dominating player. I mean, he's special. It's crazy to see
player in the league right now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, easily. He would be like the Patrick Mahomes of a defense because it's just you line anybody up across from him and he beats them, and you're like, You're not even going to try. And you're like, I
I
did
mean, he
try.
looked
He just
so
dipped and
good
spun.
against that bad Vikings the Giants O line kind of is in that same realm. Once Darisaw left the game with that concussion, it was over.
Yep.
It was done.
Yeah.
There was no chance. Kirk Cousins had no chance. Like, it was like, boom, 1, 2, 3, and it was the guys in the backfield. It'll be an interesting game.
Yeah.
What do you make of speaking of the Vikings, that game is fascinating to me because a lot of people are going to look at, Minnesota's scoreline last week and they're going to be a little bit, but they're still a pretty good football team and they've got a tough home field advantage. The issue that I see again is that offensive line. The Patriots are kind of built from that same mold of generating pressure. And I see some struggles again for, Cousins staying upright.
I think that the Vikings kind of fall closely in line to that Giants category where they're like, are they really as good as they are? And I think they're a solid team. But I think they're going to need a little bit more from Kirk Cousins to get over the hump. You're going to need a quarterback that's going to make that big boy throw. Is going to make a ballsy throw. And I don't know if Kirk has that in him. I mean, he's a good, solid quarterback. He's going to give you consistent play, but you need him to make a big-time throw and not just have Justin Jefferson bail you out with one of the greatest catches we've ever seen. So going up to having Belichick come in town, it's tough to go against Bill Belichick because he's always got something up his sleeve. You feel like he always has something that the offense isn't prepared for that he can line his defense up and make something happen. So give me the Patriots in this one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, going to be a great Thanksgiving. Anthony, wishing the best to you and yours again. Follow Anthony Armstrong on Twitter at Mr. Armstrong13, former NFL wide receiver co-host for the Believe in the Commanders podcast. Happy Thanksgiving, brother. Thanks for joining us. And let's go Commanders this week because I'm betting on them.
Yes, indeed. Left hand up, baby.
All right, Jared. I like the Commanders a lot this week. I like them at 3. I like them at 4.5. I don't think the Falcons can score. I genuinely don't think the Falcons are going to be able to score. The real question is how much does the Washington offense allow them to stay in the game by not scoring themselves? I think that's the one concern I have.
Washington's a very dangerous team. They were kind of an afterthought in the NFC East to start because the Eagles were undefeated. The Cowboys are the Cowboys, and the Giants played way over their skis. And now I think you're seeing the regression with the Giants, and you're seeing Washington kind of, flip. And I'll be honest, I am not fully sold on Philly. Not fully sold. And Washington's got a win over Philly already. So I could see Washington making things very interesting in that NFC East race down the stretch because they have a game in hand on Philly. And Dallas, I don't know if they've played Dallas yet off the top of my head.
Philly and Dallas?
But I don't.
Yeah, they did. They played
Dallas and Washington. They have not played. They play each other. Wow, there's some actually no, I take that back. I remember the Commanders got their butts kicked in that game because I was considering betting them. But they played Dallas again last week of the year at home. I mean, yeah, this Washington schedule. I mean, Atlanta, then back-to-back games against the Giants with a bye week sandwiched in between. That does not favor the Giants at all. Then Niners, Browns, Cowboys. I mean, you could make a case that this Commanders team will be favored in every game except at San Francisco and Dallas. So they'll be favored in 4 of their 6 down the stretch. If they win all 4 of those games that they're favored in, they get to 10-5. If they split the Niners and the Cowboys, let's give them the win at home against Dallas. That's an 11-win football team. I mean, I don't think they'll get to 13, which is probably where Philly will be. So they're not going to win the division, but I can see them jumping the Cowboys and being the second best team in the division. I could absolutely see a scenario where that happens.
Want to remind you guys, Let's Bet It is presented by Superbook Sports. Go to superbook.com and download the app today. And this season, we're all rooting for safeties. That's because Superbook will give you a $50 bonus on each safety scored this season. Just place a $100 pregame bet on any spread or total. And if there's a safety scored in any game on Sunday, not just the one you bet in, any game, you get a $50 bonus. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. And before we get to our plays of the day, Jared, it is time for us to check out the Pickswise.com website and let the people know what 3-star plays are out there.
Got a few for today. Surprised that there's no college hoops today, but I've got you guys covered in a minute there. NHL, Tyler Mortimer, Habs, Jackets, Christopher Moraes, Jets, Wild, and then Philip Tomich has a Sixers, Hornets total. And we've also got some soccer for tomorrow. Joe Casey's checking in on Uruguay, South Korea early tomorrow morning if you guys are interested in waking up and watching a little footy at 5 a.m. Pacific, 8 a.m. Eastern. You've been getting up early watching the World Cup, Mark? You're usually an early riser anyways.
I am. I'm watching kids, not the World Cup. So that's usually part of chasing them around is much more difficult than Japan chasing around Germany or Germany chasing around Japan, one or the other. So, but yeah, now listen, whether you, moral code aside, the upset by Saudi Arabia over Argentina was one for the ages, to say the least. So, tells you what kind of world.
I'm not even mad that I lost a shitload of money on that match. That's how insane it was. I cannot believe that. That will go back. That will go down as one of probably the biggest upsets in World Cup history. I can't see a bigger one happening in this tournament. It kind of put people on alert too. Like usually after the first big upset, that's when the favorites, percolate a little bit like, oh shit, we better get together early on because clearly this is one of those World Cups. But yeah, it's been fun so far. Betting wise, not great, but entertainment wise, off the charts.
All right, with it, let's get to our plays of the day here, Jared. I know you said you would take care of the folks in college hoops, so tee it up. There you go.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the Maui Classic, of course. Creighton in Arizona later is going to be a fantastic game. I'll be watching that one very closely. But we're going to the Cayman Islands. I'm going to drink a little strawberry daiquiri on the beach today and then hang out and watch this LSU game against Kansas State. Interesting game, off the radar, unbeaten teams at this stage of the season. Both teams off the 5-0 starts, both teams above 500 ATS. Although I say that a little bit, hesitantly because Kansas State needed overtime yesterday to get past Nevada. And that's kind of baked into this handicap. You get the back-to-back games. Actually, this is the third straight day of games, obviously, because of the tournament. And you get LSU that cruised past Akron, didn't really have any issues, won by 15. And K-State needed overtime and gave up over 80 points to Nevada. So I could see Kansas State being a little sluggish in this game. Both teams are fascinating handicaps because they both have first-year head coaches. Matt McMahon for LSU comes over from Murray State. Very successful run for the Racers. We've seen that Murray State team in the tournament over the last few seasons. And he brought over his best three players, including the OVC Player of the Year, KJ Williams, who right now currently the best player on this LSU team. So it's almost like a graduation for Murray State, taking the top guys and the head coach over to LSU. Now you're playing an SEC schedule. We'll see how that works out. But this isn't an SEC opponent. This is Kansas State, who's got some transition of their own. They brought over Jerome Tang, the assistant from Baylor, basically for the last 2 decades, won a title under Scott Drew. And this is a very talented Kansas State team, but very new, a lot of fresh faces. They've come together pretty well so far, but this is a big step up in class for them. And I think if you were going to ask me at this stage of this transitionary period, who is a little deeper, who is a little more athletic, I would certainly say it's LSU. They're top 20 in block percentage, top 40 in adjusted defense. I think Kansas State's a nice story. They were a last-place team in the Big 12 last year. I think they're going to be better this year under Tang. But I think when they step up in class like they're doing today, they're going to struggle a little bit, especially with turnovers, and that's a category that LSU excels in. I was surprised to see this line at a pick'em because the ESPN BPI numbers, which, by the way, say what you want. If you want a tool for how to look at some score lines, BPI is hitting at about 54% against the spread so far this season. So that's a good starting place for your handicap. And BPI's got this at LSU by 4 and a 64% chance of winning. So at a pick'em, I feel very confident I'm on the right side of the value of where the market will close here. So I'll take it. LSU, the championship of the Cayman Islands Classic later tonight. Going for my 4th straight play of the day win too. So hopefully we can stay hot.
All right, I'll go to the NBA as the Sacramento Kings, after beating the Memphis Grizzlies last night, come to Atlanta to face the Hawks here. Sacramento getting 6 points, might be down to 5.5 in certain spots here, but I think the wrong team is favored, or at least shouldn't be favored by this much here. Give me Sacramento +6. Look, the Kings are the highest scoring team in the league, and they are the best field goal percentage team in the league. They're 8th overall in three-point shooting percentage. Conversely, on the Hawks side, they are 4th worst in three-point shooting. They are dead last in the league in three-pointers made per game. That metric alone is enough for me to take the 6 points here with the highest scoring, better three-point shooting team. Kevin Huerter of the Sacramento Kings coming back to Atlanta, making his return there. Should have a little revenge on his mind. He's shooting 50% from three on the year. Wow. I expect Sacramento, despite the fact that they are on a back-to-back, to be able to keep this thing much closer. An incredibly high total, guys, at 239. Give me the dog here, getting 6 points in Atlanta as the Sacramento Kings look to go back-to-back here, but better three-point shooting team. Despite the back-to-back, I'll take the Sacramento Kings +6. All right, that'll do it for us here on Let's Bet It, which is presented by Superbook Sports. Again, make sure you guys download the Pickswise app, available on the Apple Store and Google Play. Subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. For Jared Smith, I'm Mark Zinno, wishing you guys a happy, healthy, and wonderful Thanksgiving. And we'll be back on Let's Bet It again. Good luck today. Go cash some tickets. Go get it. Go bet it. Have a great day.